Sparky the spunky squirrel zipped down the tall oak tree, his green vest flapping like a tiny flag in the wind. He leapt from branch to branch with cheerful speed, landing lightly on the soft grass below. "Race you to the meadow!" he shouted, spotting Twitchy the tricky fox near the pond's edge. Sparky's voice carried across the water, bouncing like pebbles skipping. The warm afternoon buzzed with playful energy, and even the dragonflies seemed to zoom faster. Sparky's tail flicked in excitement, and his paws tapped the ground like drums before a parade. The meadow ahead shimmered under the sun, promising a grand finish line. Somewhere in the distance, a bird sang a tune that sounded suspiciously like a countdown. Sparky grinned, ready for fun, and dashed forward before Twitchy could even reply. Twitchy the tricky fox grinned wide, his orange shirt bright as a pumpkin in the sunlight. "You'll lose, Sparky," he said, and before Sparky could argue, Twitchy darted forward like a streak of fiery fur. His feet pounded the grass, sending small seeds flying into the air. The long meadow grass swayed side to side, looking almost like it was cheering them on. A butterfly fluttered past, clearly trying to keep up with the race. Sparky laughed and pushed harder. But Twitchy's sly grin made Sparky wonder if the fox had some sneaky trick planned. Twitchy's tail streamed behind him like a banner, and his shoes thudded in a rhythm that sounded suspiciously like victory, victory. The meadow seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see who would win. Ollie the wise owl perched on a low branch of a sturdy maple, her teal shirt neat and smooth as freshly folded laundry. She watched the two racers zip across the meadow, her eyes sharp but warm. "Careful, you two," she called, her voice gentle, yet carrying easily through the breeze. A smile tugged at her beak as she tilted her head just enough to catch both of them in her view. The wind ruffled her feathers, and the leaves above whispered like gossiping neighbors. She knew Sparky and Twitchy's races often ended with giggles, but sometimes with tumbles too. Ollie's wings twitched, ready to swoop if someone stumbled. Her gaze followed them closely, amused by their determination and secretly curious who might win this sunny challenge. Giggles the goofy groundhog waddled past, his orange scarf bouncing with every step like a bouncy ball on a string. He waved cheerfully at the racers. "If you trip, I'll wing by default," he joked, his grin stretching from cheek to cheek. Sparky and Twitchy laughed mid-stride, their race momentarily lighter from the groundhog's silliness. The meadow smelled sweet with clover, and a honeybee buzzed lazily nearby, clearly uninterested in racing. Giggles adjusted his scarf dramatically, pretending it was a champion's medal. He took a slow, exaggerated step toward the finish line as if he had all day. The fox and squirrel exchanged amused glances before focusing again on the path ahead. Even the grass seemed to giggle along with them, swishing softly in the playful air. Sparky hopped over a fallen log, his paws landing with a soft thump. Without slowing, he shouted, "I know something about Twitchy." His tail flicked excitedly like a flag signaling news, and his voice echoed through the trees, bouncing from trunk to trunk. Twitchy's ears twitched at the sound, but Sparky was too caught up in the thrill of sharing to notice. The sunlight danced on his green vest, making him look like a moving leaf. Birds overhead chirped like they were trying to guess the secret too. Sparky grinned wide, his words ready to tumble out, even though the race was still on. The meadow's breeze seemed to lean in closer, curious about what Sparky might reveal next. Twitchy slowed his pace, his orange shirt catching the light as he turned his head. "Wait, what do you mean?" he asked, the playful tone in his voice now mixed with a hint of worry. His ears twitched nervously, and he glanced towards Sparky with sharp eyes. The sunlight dimmed behind a passing cloud, making the meadow feel suddenly cooler. Sparky kept running, but his mind buzzed with excitement about the secret. Twitchy's steps grew slower, his tail lowered slightly, and his earlier grin faded. Around them, the grass whispered softly, as if unsure whether to cheer anymore. Twitchy's gaze followed Sparky closely, waiting for an answer he wasn't sure he wanted to hear. Without thinking, Sparky blurted out Twitchy's secret. "He's afraid of puddles." The words tumbled from his mouth like acorns rolling downhill, unstoppable once they started. His voice rang out across the meadow, startling a nearby crow into flight. Sparky's eyes widened as he realized what he'd just said. Twitchy froze mid-step, his tail stiff as a stick. The air between them felt heavier, like a storm cloud had sneaked in. Sparky's heart thumped faster, and he wished he could scoop the words back up and hide them. Somewhere behind them, a frog croaked, sounding suspiciously like a gasp. Sparky's paws shuffled, suddenly unsure whether to keep running or stop completely. Everyone paused at Sparky's outburst. Ollie tilted her head, her eyes wide with surprise. Giggles snorted and burst into laughter. "Puddles? That's splash-tacular," he said, barely able to stand upright from giggling. The tension in the air wobbled like jelly on a plate. Sparky's ears twitched nervously, unsure whether to laugh or hide. Twitchy's eyes narrowed slightly, but the corner of his mouth twitched, as if deciding whether to join in. The meadow seemed to hum with curious energy, as though even the grass wanted to know more. A butterfly fluttered past, clearly unconcerned about puddles. Giggles wiped a tear from laughing too hard. But Sparky felt a lump in his throat that laughter couldn't shake. Twitchy crossed his arms tightly over his orange shirt. "That wasn't yours to tell," he said softly, though his words carried clearly. A small breeze drifted through the meadow, making the tall grass whisper like it was sharing its own secrets. Sparky shuffled his feet, avoiding Twitchy's eyes. The earlier cheer of the race faded into an awkward stillness. A cricket chirped somewhere nearby, but even its song seemed cautious. Twitchy's tail swished slowly from side to side, a quiet rhythm that spoke of disappointment. The fox's voice was calm, yet it made Sparky's chest feel heavy. The meadow's bright colors seemed to dull just a little. Sparky's ears drooped low, and his tail curled in close to his body. "Secret, whoops!" he squeaked, the words tumbling out in a tiny, guilty voice. His green vest, once light and playful, suddenly felt heavy against his fur. The joyful energy of the race had vanished, replaced by a thick, awkward silence. Sparky's paws fidgeted, scratching lightly at the grass as he avoided meeting Twitchy's gaze. A ladybug crawled across his shoe, moving far more confidently than he felt. His mouth opened like he wanted to say more, but nothing came. Even the oak tree behind them seemed to stand still, listening. Ollie fluttered down from her branch and landed gently beside Sparky. "Truth mends," she said, her voice warm but steady. Her teal shirt rustled lightly as her wings folded in. Sparky glanced up at her, unsure if that meant things could be fixed. Ollie gave him a small nod, the kind that made her words feel solid. The sunlight returned in patches through the clouds, brushing gold across her feathers. She stood close enough for Sparky to feel safe, but not so close that Twitchy couldn't hear. The meadow's quiet seemed to lean in, waiting to see what Sparky would do next. Giggles waddled over and tapped Sparky's shoulder with a paw. "Maybe offer him a puddle-proof friendship?" he joked, giving an exaggerated wink. His scarf bobbed with each chuckle, looking like it might leap off his neck. Sparky blinked at him, unsure whether to laugh or groan. Ollie's eyes softened, clearly liking the playful suggestion. Giggles leaned closer. "We could build a puddle patrol," he added, making himself sound like a superhero. The ground beneath them felt warmer again, as if the meadow approved of humor returning. Sparky's tail twitched just slightly, a tiny spark of hope. Sparky nodded slowly, his ears lifting just a little. "I'm really sorry, Twitchy. I wasn't thinking," he said, his voice quieter than usual. His green vest shifted as he took a small step forward. Twitchy's gaze stayed steady, but Sparky thought he saw a flicker of understanding. The breeze brushed between them, carrying the faint scent of clover. Sparky's paws pressed into the grass, grounding him for what felt like an important moment. Ollie watched silently, her feathers still, waiting to see how Twitchy would respond. Twitchy looked away for a moment, his eyes following a passing butterfly. Then he turned back to Sparky. "You embarrassed me," he said, still frowning. His tail swished slowly, not in anger, but in thought. Sparky's chest tightened at the words, wishing he could rewind time. The meadow was quiet except for a single bird calling from far off. Twitchy's voice was steady, but it carried enough weight to make Sparky's paws feel heavy. The sun flickered between clouds, as if unsure whether to shine fully. Ollie folded her wings neatly against her sides. "Quick honesty is like fixing a leaky nest," she explained, her tone calm but certain. Her eyes shone with a kindness that made both friends listen closely. She glanced from Sparky to Twitchy, making sure her words landed with each. The meadow seemed to nod along, leaves rustling softly overhead. Sparky tilted his head, imagining a nest with patched twigs holding strong in the wind. Twitchy's ears twitched, the metaphor settling in slowly. Giggles let out another giggle, clearly unable to resist. "Or like patching a hole in your sock before the big dance," he added. His voice bounced with playful exaggeration. Sparky smirked at the silly image, picturing Twitchy hopping around in mismatched socks. Ollie rolled her eyes lightly, but her beak curved in a smile. Even Twitchy's tail gave the smallest flick, betraying amusement. The meadow seemed to hum brighter again, as though laughter was stitching the moment together. Sparky stepped closer to Twitchy, his paws brushing the grass softly. "Please forgive me," he said, smiling nervously. His green vest caught the sunlight, flashing like a hopeful signal. The oak leaves above rustled gently, as if cheering him on. Twitchy's eyes studied him for a long moment. Sparky's tail flicked in a careful rhythm, matching the slow beat of his heart. Ollie stood nearby, her gaze steady, ready to see if the fox's answer would mend the moment. Twitchy sighed, his shoulders loosening just a little. "You didn't mean to hurt me, did you?" he asked, his voice softer now. Sparky shook his head quickly, eager to answer. The air between them felt lighter, the earlier tension slipping away. A bee buzzed past, completely uninterested in their serious talk. Sparky shook his head firmly. "No way, you're my racing buddy," he said, his tone full of earnest energy. His tail flicked in a hopeful rhythm, matching his words. Twitchy's mouth twitched toward a small smile. The breeze picked up, carrying the fresh scent of grass toward them. Ollie's eyes warmed at the friendship reminder. Sparky stood tall, his green vest fluttering lightly, as if it agreed with him. Ollie nodded, her feathers catching a glint of sunlight. "See? Truth mends," she repeated with a gentle firmness. Her teal shirt shimmered softly in the breeze. Twitchy glanced at her, then at Sparky, the phrase settling deeper this time. The grass swayed around them like a slow applause. Giggles was watching from a short distance, clearly waiting for the moment to turn playful again. Ollie's gaze stayed steady, encouraging them both to finish the mending. Giggles bounded closer, pretending to hold a giant puddle with his scarf stretched wide. "I'll guard it so Twitchy stays dry," he announced, puffing out his chest. The scarf wobbled comically in the breeze. Sparky snorted with laughter, and Ollie's beak curved in amusement. Twitchy raised an eyebrow, clearly amused despite himself. The meadow seemed to grin along with them, blades of grass leaning toward the fun. Giggles gave the scarf a heroic shake, sending it flapping like a flag. Twitchy chuckled, his earlier frown finally fading. "That scarf isn't big enough," he teased, his orange shirt glowing again in the sunlight. Giggles gasped dramatically, pretending to be shocked. Sparky laughed, his tail twitching in delight. Ollie rolled her eyes but smiled. The warm air wrapped around them like a blanket, pulling the mood fully back to playful. Twitchy's tail swished in a lighter rhythm now, free of earlier tension. Sparky laughed and nodded. "We'll all help keep puddles away," he promised with a grin. The meadow's mood felt lighter, almost like it was bouncing with joy. Twitchy's eyes softened, appreciating the playful pledge. Ollie's wings gave a small flutter of approval. Giggles saluted dramatically with his scarf, sealing the deal. The sun shone brighter, painting the grass in gold. Sparky's green vest gleamed in the fresh warmth, as though agreeing with his words. Ollie stepped forward, her teal shirt shimmering under the sunlight. "Let's race again, but slower this time," she suggested, her tone playful but wise. Sparky tilted his head, intrigued by the idea. Twitchy raised an eyebrow but didn't refuse. The meadow's grass swayed gently, as though approving the change in pace. Giggles pretended to stretch like an athlete, already preparing for mischief. Ollie's wings tucked neatly as she smiled at her friends. Giggles stomped dramatically on the grass. "Slow race? I'm already winning," he declared, his scarf fluttering like a victory flag. Sparky laughed, shaking his head at the claim. Twitchy smirked, clearly ready to challenge him. Ollie chuckled softly, watching the playful scene unfold. The meadow seemed to hum with amusement, the clover nodding along. Giggles took a slow, exaggerated step, making everyone giggle even more. Sparky grinned widely, eyes sparkling. "Ready, Twitchy?" he asked, his voice full of excitement. The fox's ears perked up at the challenge. Twitchy's tail swished in anticipation, his earlier mood fully gone. The grass around them rustled as if eager to watch. Ollie tilted her head, keeping her wise smile. Giggles crouched like a sprinter, though clearly planning something silly. The meadow felt charged with playful energy again. Twitchy nodded, his grin returning. "Let's go, but no puddles," he said, making everyone burst into laughter. Sparky's green vest bobbed as he prepared to move. Ollie's wings twitched, ready to clap in rhythm. Giggles gave a mock salute before taking a step backward instead of forward. The sunlight warmed their fur and feathers, promising a cheerful race ahead. Even the grass seemed to lean toward the starting line. They jogged through the meadow together, Ollie clapping her wings in a steady rhythm. The sun warmed their fur and feathers, wrapping them in golden light. Sparky's tail flicked happily with each step. Twitchy's orange shirt shone like a bright flag in the breeze. Giggles puffed exaggeratedly, pretending to be tired after only a few strides. The meadow scent of clover and grass filled the air, making the moment feel fresh and full of fun. Giggles pretended to trip over an invisible puddle, tumbling into the grass with a silly splash. His scarf landed over his head like a parachute. Sparky doubled over laughing, his green vest shaking with each chuckle. Twitchy snorted, trying to keep jogging. Ollie's wings folded as she laughed, her eyes sparkling. The meadow joined in with the sound of rustling leaves. Giggles popped up dramatically, declaring himself soaked despite being perfectly dry. Sparky smiled wide and said, "See? Fun without secret spilling." His green vest gleamed in the sunlight as he jogged lightly. Twitchy nodded, his tail flicking in agreement. Ollie gave a small, approving clap of her wings. Giggles struck a superhero pose, scarf flying in the breeze. The meadow's warm air carried their laughter far. Sparky felt lighter, glad the race was now filled only with joy. Twitchy smiled, his eyes warm again. "We're still friends," he said, the words easy but meaningful. The air felt fresh and bright, sweeping away the last bits of tension. Sparky's tail danced happily in the breeze. Ollie's gaze softened, pleased with the mended bond. Giggles gave a goofy thumbs up, making the others chuckle. The meadow seemed to sigh in relief, its colors vivid once more. Ollie added with a wise nod, "And now we all know honesty keeps hearts dry." Her teal shirt caught the breeze, rippling softly. Sparky grinned at the thought, imagining hearts under tiny umbrellas. Twitchy chuckled, appreciating the playful twist. Giggles pretended to hold an umbrella over everyone, making them laugh. The sun shone warmly, matching the comfort in their friendship. The meadow swayed gently, as if agreeing. Giggles wrapped his scarf around everyone in a big group hug. "Friendship shield, no leaks," he announced proudly. Sparky laughed, his green vest snug against Twitchy's orange shirt. Ollie's feathers brushed gently against them, her teal shirt catching light. The meadow whispered in approval as the breeze passed through. Twitchy's tail curled happily, and his earlier worry seemed far away. Together they stood smiling, ready for whatever races or puddles might come next.